When Xavier Booker, a well-dressed young black man, arrives at the Magnolia Grand Hotel for a weekend stay, he expects luxury and relaxation. Instead, he encounters the hotel manager Tom Whitaker, whose thinly veiled prejudice leads to humiliation and unfair treatment. What Tom doesn't realize is that Xavier's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, a high-profile corporate executive, owns a controlling stake in the hotel. And when she arrives, Tom's career takes an unexpected turn. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss a story. The lobby of the Magnolia Grand Hotel was a study in old Southern charm: crystal chandeliers, polished mahogany floors, and gold-accented columns. Behind the front desk, Tom Whitaker adjusted his tie as he surveyed the guests arriving for the weekend. He prided himself on maintaining the quote prestige of the hotel, though to him that meant keeping an eye on people who didn't fit the image. Then Xavier Booker walked in. Tall, confident, and dressed in a tailored navy suit, Xavier carried himself with ease. His suitcase rolled smoothly behind him as he approached the front desk. He had made a reservation for a premium suite weeks ago, ready to enjoy a weekend away from work. Whitaker's smile tightened the moment he saw him. He glanced at Xavier's designer luggage and then at his face, his blue eyes flickering with something unreadable, something Xavier, at 26 years old, had seen too many times before. "Good afternoon," Xavier said, setting his ID and credit card on the counter. "I have a reservation. Xavier Booker." Whitaker took his time picking up the ID, his fingers lingering on it as if double-checking its legitimacy. He barely glanced at the screen before shaking his head. "I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have a reservation under that name." Xavier frowned. "That's not possible. I booked weeks ago and even got a confirmation email this morning." He pulled out his phone, ready to show the proof. Whitaker barely looked at the screen. "There must have been a mistake in our system. Unfortunately, we're fully booked now." Xavier exhaled slowly, keeping his composure. "So you're telling me that my confirmed, prepaid reservation just vanished?" Whitaker gave him a thin smile. "It happens sometimes." Xavier took another breath. He wasn't naive. He recognized what was happening. But he also knew how to handle men like Whitaker. "Fine," he said. "Can I speak to a manager?" Whitaker straightened. "I am the manager." Xavier nodded, studying the man in front of him. "And your name?" "Tom Whitaker." Xavier smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Thanks, Tom. I think I'll make a call." Whitaker's expression faltered for half a second before he regained his smug confidence. "Feel free. But it won't change anything." Xavier stepped aside, dialing a number. Whitaker turned his attention back to his computer, convinced he had handled the situation. He had no idea that the call Xavier was making would change everything. 10 minutes later, Tom Whitaker stood behind the counter, still confident in his decision. He had dealt with people like Xavier before, young men who thought they could just waltz into an establishment like this and expect top-tier treatment. He had the authority here, and there was nothing some phone call could do to change that. Then the front doors of the Magnolia Grand swung open. A woman in a crisp white blouse and navy blue pencil skirt strode in, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floors. She was flanked by two men in tailored suits, both wearing the no-nonsense expressions of people accustomed to making things happen. Whitaker's confidence wavered as the woman approached, her piercing blue eyes locked on him. He had worked at the hotel long enough to recognize power when he saw it, and there was something unsettlingly familiar about her. "Tom Whitaker?" she asked coolly. "Yes, ma'am," he said, straightening his tie. "How can I assist you?" She didn't smile. "I'm Eleanor Whitmore, majority shareholder of the Magnolia Grand and chairwoman of Whitmore Enterprises." Whitaker's stomach dropped. Eleanor Whitmore. He had read about her in business magazines, seen her name in company emails, but he had never met her in person, until now, and standing beside her, arms crossed, was Xavier. "Xavier," Whitaker stammered, his throat dry. "You—" "My son," Eleanor interrupted. Whitaker's jaw clenched. "Son." The realization hit him like a freight train. This was not just any guest. This was the son of the most powerful woman involved in the hotel's operations. Eleanor folded her arms. "Xavier called me and explained that he was denied a room despite having a confirmed reservation. Do you want to explain why that happened?" Whitaker swallowed. There was a system error. His reservation must not have processed correctly. Eleanor arched an eyebrow. A system error? Or a personal decision? Whitaker's face turned red. I assure you, Mrs. Whitmore, it was nothing personal. Eleanor held up a manicured hand. Stop! Her voice was calm but razor-sharp. I have zero tolerance for discrimination at my establishments, and from what I understand, you didn't just refuse my son a room, you were dismissive, condescending, and made no effort to rectify the situation. Whitaker opened his mouth to argue, but Eleanor wasn't finished. I built my career on accountability, and right now, you're going to be held accountable. 5 minutes later. Hotel security escorted Tom Whitaker out of the Magnolia Grand. His protests fell on deaf ears. His career at the hotel was over. Inside, Eleanor turned to Xavier. You shouldn't have had to call me, she said. Xavier exhaled, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I knew you'd handle it. Eleanor's expression softened, but there was steel in her voice. This isn't just about you, Xavier. It's about making sure no one else goes through this. Xavier nodded. His mother wasn't just powerful. She was principled. And now, the Magnolia Grand would be a better place because of it. 30 minutes later. After Whitaker was escorted out, Eleanor Whitmore wasted no time asserting her authority. She called an emergency meeting with the hotel's senior staff, all of whom scrambled into the conference room on the second floor. Xavier, sitting beside his mother at the head of the polished oak table, watched as the employees shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided Eleanor's gaze entirely. They all knew what had happened. Eleanor tapped her manicured fingers against the table, letting the silence settle before she spoke. What happened today was unacceptable. She began, her voice crisp and unwavering. A paying guest, who happens to be my son, was refused service based on nothing but the bias of a now former employee. A murmur went through the room. I want to make one thing clear, Eleanor continued. This is not about Xavier getting special treatment. This is about ensuring that no guest, regardless of their race, background, or social status, is treated unfairly at this hotel. A hand slowly went up. It belonged to Rachel Morrison, the assistant general manager. She was in her mid-40s, with graying brown hair and an air of competence. Mrs. Whitmore, Rachel said, choosing her words carefully. With all due respect, Tom Whitaker has been with this hotel for years. This is the first time we've had an issue like this. First time? Eleanor interrupted. Or first time he got caught? Rachel hesitated. Eleanor's lips pressed together. I checked the guest complaint logs before this meeting. There were multiple reports about Whitaker treating guests unfairly, mostly guests of color. And yet nothing was done. Why? Silence. Eleanor exhaled sharply. That ends today. Effective immediately, we're implementing a mandatory bias training program for all staff. Any employee caught engaging in discriminatory practices will be terminated on the spot. No exceptions. More murmurs. Some nodded in agreement. Others, like Rachel, looked uneasy. Xavier leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. If this hotel wants to maintain its reputation, it can't afford to tolerate people like Whitaker. Eleanor nodded. Precisely. The Magnolia Grand will be known for excellence, not exclusion. If anyone has a problem with that, now's the time to leave. Nobody moved. Eleanor stood, smoothing out her blouse. Good. Meeting adjourned. As the staff filed out, Xavier turned to his mother. You really came in here and handled everything in under an hour. Eleanor smiled. I don't waste time. Xavier chuckled. I can see that. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You deserve to enjoy your weekend. Your suite is waiting for you. For the first time that day, Xavier felt himself relax. The Magnolia Grand would be a better place now. 2 hours later. Xavier sat on the private balcony of his suite, sipping a glass of chilled water as he gazed out at the Charleston skyline. The tension from earlier had faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. The Magnolia Grand would no longer be a place where discrimination was tolerated, and his mother had ensured that. His phone buzzed on the table beside him. A text from his best friend, Andre. Andre. Bro, I heard what happened at that hotel. You good? Listia. Xavier smirked, shaking his head as he typed back. Listia. Xavier. Yeah, I'm good. Mom handled it. Within seconds, Andre replied. Andre. Of course she did. Your mom is a beast. LOL. Xavier chuckled. He couldn't argue with that. Just as he set his phone down, there was a knock at his suite door. He walked over and opened it to find Rachel Morrison, the assistant general manager, standing there. Her expression was unreadable. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. Xavier stepped aside, motioning for her to enter. Rachel looked around briefly before turning to face him. "I wanted to apologize." Xavier raised an eyebrow. "For what?" She let out a slow breath. "For not stepping in sooner. The truth is, I knew Whitaker had certain biases. I saw the way he treated some guests differently, but I never spoke up. I told myself it wasn't my place." Xavier folded his arms. "And now?" Rachel met his gaze. "Now I realize that silence makes me complicit." She hesitated before adding, "Your mother was right. This place can be better, and I want to be part of that change." Xavier studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good." Rachel nodded back. "Enjoy your stay, Xavier." With that, she turned and left the suite. Xavier closed the door behind her, a thoughtful expression on his face. Maybe real change was possible here. The next morning, Eleanor Whitmore stood at the front desk of the Magnolia Grand, watching as guests checked in and out. The energy in the lobby already felt different. Staff members were more attentive, more professional. The tension that had lingered under Whitaker's management was gone. She turned as Xavier walked up beside her. "Ready for brunch?" he asked. Eleanor smiled. "Always." As they walked toward the restaurant, a staff member rushed up. It was a young black woman in her early 20s, wearing a concierge uniform. "Mrs. Whitmore?" she said hesitantly. Eleanor turned. "Yes?" The woman swallowed before speaking. "I just wanted to say thank you. A lot of us noticed how Mr. Whitaker treated people, but we didn't think anything would ever change. What you did, it mattered." Eleanor's expression softened. "Thank you for being here. And I promise you, things will be different from now on." The woman smiled, nodded, and hurried back to work. Xavier looked at his mother. "You really are a force of nature," Eleanor chuckled. "Someone has to be." As they entered the restaurant, the atmosphere was lighter, the future of the Magnolia Grand brighter. Change had come, and it was here to stay. 2 weeks later, news of the incident at the Magnolia Grand spread quickly. Eleanor Whitmore's decisive action became a major talking point in Charleston's business circles. While many applauded her swift justice, others, especially those with outdated views, muttered about overcorrection and political correctness run amok. But Eleanor didn't care. She had spent decades building her reputation as a leader who valued fairness and excellence above all else. And if some people had a problem with that, well, they weren't the kind of people she wanted in her hotels anyway. One afternoon, as she sat in her corporate office reviewing quarterly reports, her assistant entered with a cautious expression. "Mrs. Whitmore," the young man said, "you have an unexpected visitor, Tom Whitaker." Eleanor looked up, her expression unreadable. "Send him in." The assistant hesitated. "Are you sure? I can tell him you're unavailable." Eleanor waved a hand dismissively. "No need. Let's hear what he has to say." Moments later, Whitaker stepped into the office. He looked different, less polished, more unsettled. His usual smug confidence was gone. "Mrs. Whitmore," he began, his voice tight. "Thank you for seeing me." Eleanor leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "What do you want, Tom?" Whitaker swallowed. "I came to apologize." Eleanor arched an eyebrow. "I made a mistake," he continued. "I was wrong. I let my own biases cloud my judgment, and I understand now that what I did was unacceptable." Eleanor tapped her nails against the desk. "Do you?" Whitaker hesitated, clearly expecting an easier conversation. "Yes, ma'am, I do. Look, I've worked in hospitality for over a decade. Losing my position at the Magnolia Grand has made it difficult to find another job." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Actions have consequences, Tom." "I know," he said quickly, "but if there's anything I can do to make this right." Eleanor studied him carefully. Was this genuine remorse? Or just desperation? "You don't get to walk back in and fix this overnight," she said. "The damage you did wasn't just about my son. It was about every guest who walked into that hotel and was treated like they didn't belong." Whitaker looked down. "I know," Eleanor sighed. Here's the truth, Tom. You need to take a long, hard look at yourself. You can't undo what you did, but you can decide what kind of person you want to be moving forward. If you really mean what you're saying, prove it. Not to me, but to yourself. Whitaker nodded, defeat settling into his shoulders. I understand. He turned to leave but paused at the door. For what it's worth, I do regret it. Eleanor didn't respond. As the door closed behind him, she exhaled, shaking her head. Some people only learned lessons the hard way. Since the scandal, the Magnolia Grand had undergone significant changes. The staff training program had been fully implemented, and the hotel's reputation was stronger than ever. Guest satisfaction ratings soared, and word spread that the establishment was not only luxurious, but also welcoming to everyone. Xavier visited the hotel frequently, checking in with the new general manager, a woman named Lisa Caldwell, who had worked her way up through the hospitality industry with a reputation for fairness and professionalism. One afternoon, as he strolled through the bright and bustling lobby, he smiled at the diverse mix of guests checking in. He had once felt unwelcome here. Now, things were different. Lisa walked up beside him, holding a tablet. You see the latest guest feedback survey? Xavier glanced at the screen. Guest review. This is the best hotel experience I've had in Charleston. The staff made me feel truly valued. I'll definitely be back. He grinned. That's what I like to see. Lisa nodded. It's been a process, but we got here. Xavier's phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Eleanor, dinner at 7? Let's celebrate. Xavier smiled, texting back. Xavier wouldn't miss it. As he walked toward the exit, he took one last look at the Magnolia Grand. A place that had once turned him away was now a shining example of what hospitality should be, and that was a victory worth celebrating. Xavier's experience at the Magnolia Grand serves as a powerful reminder that standing up to discrimination can bring about real change. It's about using your voice to demand accountability and fairness. No one should ever feel unwelcome because of their background. Integrity and respect are the foundations of progress. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications to be the first to know when the next story drops.